Washington, D.C. is run by a permanent political class of opportunistic, greedy hacks who get elected, go to D.C., enrich themselves, and ignore the people who put them there. And, of course, I'm speaking of Adam Schiff, congressman for the 28th District. And many people in that district have had enough, including our guest, Jennifer Barbosa, who is running as an independent candidate to defeat Adam Schiff. Thank you for joining us in studio, Jennifer.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about you for a minute before we get to your opponent. Let's face it, this campaign is really going to be about Adam Schiff, his behavior, and whether he is, in fact, serving the constituents of the 28th. But if you're going to make the case and say he has failed, elect me, you need to tell the people of the 28th who you are, what brought you here, and why you will be better. So let's start there. What brought you here? What's your background?
Well, I've lived in Los Angeles almost 20 years, since about 2001. I moved to Adam Schiff's district in approximately 2013. He became the congressman of that area, Hollywood, through redistricting. And I noticed immediately when I moved to that neighborhood compared to other neighborhoods, there's just this tremendous disconnect between what the politicians are doing, local, state, and federal, what they're implementing, what they're talking about, and what the neighborhoods really need.
What they care about, what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I live in an area, people think Hollywood, oh, glamour. No, my neighborhood, the median income is $30,000. Half the people are immigrants, non-English speaking. So a lot of people there are afraid to speak up, or afraid to challenge the government. They, kind of prefer to stay off the radar. And others like me who are pretty vocal, we don't have the means, the financial means to hire the lawyers that other neighborhoods do when there are problems, if the government's not listening, they take it to the courts.
Right.
We don't have that. And I feel they're taking advantage of that.
And you started getting involved in some local issues in Hollywood, didn't you? You said, enough. I'm not going to sit here and complain about it and just, scream on social media. I'm actually going to put my money where my mouth is and actually do something about it.
Right. I'm really not a social media person. I just put up some social media sites because I'm running for office now. I really prefer dealing with the issues and dealing with people directly. And so, yes, I was elected to my neighborhood council in 2014 and then appointed vice chair of the board. And I worked on that. That's where I really learned about what's going on with the real estate developers and how they're sort of profiting off of the homelessness issue in our district. They're getting $500,000 to $700,000 for each unit that they're a quote unquote affordable housing unit that they're building. But this money obviously is enriching real estate developers, not solving the problem of homelessness.
And in turn, those real estate developers donate to the campaigns or to the political action committees of the politicians who make the decisions to give them all those tax dollars.
Yes.
And by extension, Adam Schiff, the congressman, his only response to fixing the homeless problem in Hollywood, in Burbank, and in his district is to bring more federal dollars to do the exact same thing. And you mentioned the homeless problem in Burbank. Yes, there's a homeless problem in Burbank. It's nothing like what you have in my area, however, True.
Because the Burbank voters won't reelect him if it gets over there. That's where more donors are. That's where,
So he makes sure that the local officials in Burbank keep that area clean so he can keep the money flowing to his campaign.
Well,
is what you're saying.
I cannot prove that,
right.
But that's certainly how
it is amazing how where the politicians live or where the big donors live, those neighborhood streets seem to be clean.
It is amazing. Isn't it,
what
Larry?
a coincidence.
It's amazing.
How is that possible? I don't understand. We're speaking with Jennifer Barbosa, and she's talking about her history. In 2001 is when you moved to the Hollywood portion of Adam Schiff's district, right?
No, 2000. Well, I lived. No, I shouldn't say that.
That's where you've been to California.
I lived in Hollywood briefly before 2001, but I moved to LA in 2001.
And what was your profession? How did you pay the bills when you were here? What's your background?
Well, I actually produced a talk radio show before I moved to LA. I was living in New York.
Oh, really?
And I thought I would do that here. And I did not know anyone here when I moved here. And so it was found out being in Hollywood, it's actually a little bit easier to get job work in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I thought maybe I'd work on documentaries. I love documentaries. But I ended up getting some acting work, became a member of the Screen Actors Guild. That's a wonderful way to pay the bills. If you can get the work, it's still hard to get work.
Yes.
They have a great, what do you call it? Health insurance.
Benefits package. Yes.
Yeah. So I still try to do that. Even 2 weeks ago, I was playing an LAPD cop on a TV show.
Cool.
And then also I've worked at a law firm in Pasadena and have been hired by various neighborhood groups who, they're they need an advocate or a consultant on their various issues. So,
see, I ask you this. I've already checked your IMDb, so I knew you did films. But I ask you this because this is what our founders intended.
Yes,
they want people who live in the community, who work in the community, who properly represent. I mean, let's face it. You live in the 28th district of California. You work in the film business. That makes sense. You represent a major component of the businesses and the residents in this area because so many people are connected to the film business. And our founders didn't want a bunch of lawyers
exactly. I tell
going
people,
to Washington.
Yeah, if you think the problem with Washington is that there are not enough lawyers, I'm not your guy. I'm not.
Exactly.
But, we need some people who represent the middle class.
Yes. And by the way, this very much is a working class, middle class district. Very much so. So that brings us to Adam Schiff because that's not him. That's not that guy. He came into office talking a good game. He went door to door, said, Rogan isn't representing you anymore. This crazy impeachment of Clinton. All he cares about is his big friends in D.C. How the worm is turned.
Yes. I've spoken with voters. One woman said to me directly, the most embarrassing thing I have ever done is help Adam Schiff get elected.
Wow.
She was a Republican. She bought the story about how, it was time for Rogan to go, which it's a credible story.
It's fine. Yeah, I don't want to relitigate that other than Adam Schiff made that argument that could so effectively be used against him right now. Yeah.
Right.
And so now, he's really more of a Washington D.C. creature. It's funny. I before we went on the air, I told Jennifer that I'm back and forth all the time, but my residence in D.C. is in Maryland, and you said, "Oh, that's where Adam Schiff lives."
Right. So you and Adam Schiff probably have the same congressman.
Right. We are actually. Actually, he lives in a much richier part of that area of Maryland. He's represented by a billionaire who owns a bunch of wine stores.
What's his name?
God, I forget his name now. Total wine. He just won election. I'll get his name for you.
Democrat.
He's a Democrat. Oh, absolutely. It's Maryland. Absolutely. And Jamie Raskin is my congressman who is currently in the Rules Committee. But the point is, he's more of a Marylander at this point than he is a Californian.
Yes,
Adam Schiff.
His children graduated from Maryland schools. He won't send his children to our public schools, but we're supposed to. And he's been out there for decades. I don't think he had any intention of staying here.
So tell me about how your campaign is going. First of all, we're speaking with Jennifer Barbosa. She's an independent candidate for the 28th district. And it's important to point out, everyone needs to remember the idea of the jungle primary, because party affiliation is not necessarily as critical anymore the way we do elections here in California.
Correct. People say, quite understandably, you're a third party. How can third party succeed? That never succeeds. Well, here in our district, Republican is like the third party. Only, what are the percentages? 16% of the voters here are Republican?
Yeah. Well, I used to work in the entertainment business, and I used to joke whenever I would meet somebody who said that they were a libertarian or an independent, in the back of my mind I was like, oh, well, you're a Republican. We just don't say it in California, or you don't affiliate because for various reasons. One of them is because the Republican Party in California has been kind of a basket case, and they're not very good at pushing a message. But the other reason is, it's not popular to be affiliated with one of those parties. So there's nothing wrong with being an independent. That's a huge portion of the voting base. Huge
and growing. It's the fastest growing portion. So
what's your strategy then? Knowing that there's a jungle primary, as you get out of the primary, it's going to be Adam Schiff and someone else.
Yes.
So how do you become that someone else?
Well, we had an interesting thing on December 5th. The December 6th was the cutoff date to file. You cannot jump into the race anymore after December 6th. On December 5th, another contender jumped in, another Republican. So that puts 2 Republicans on the ballot, 3 or 4 independents, which is normal. There are normally some independents who run against Schiff. I don't think they have much of a game. They haven't raised much money total, maybe $5,000 total among them. It's not very much. So we have several Democrats, Schiff, 2 Republicans, and me, the one woman and the one independent. And those are factors that are going to play very heavily on voters.
Okay.
Right there.
And so, and right now, your job is to raise money or hopefully get people to help raise money for you and then meet the voters, right? Is that where you're spending most of your time, is going to door and talking to voters? Yes.
And I'm shocked by how much I actually enjoy it. I don't consider myself a people person, but you don't have to be. It's just a wonderful way to just get in touch with humanity. It is, as you said, the way our founding fathers intended.
Yeah.
And everybody has a story. Everybody has a reason they believe what they believe. And even people who like Adam Schiff, they just, for the most part, just say, no, thank you. I like Adam Schiff.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful. And a lot of people are open to conversation. And they inform my campaign and my platform so much by giving me direct feedback on what matters to them.
Now, Adam Schiff has found himself on the Intelligence Committee. He's now the chairman of the Intelligence Committee. First 2 years of the Trump presidency, he was the ranking member. Actually, until for the last 6 years, he was the ranking member. And he had a moment of truth about 2 years ago where he put out a document on behalf of the Intelligence Committee basically making claims about the FBI's investigation and the use of FISA warrants and all of the things that were done to investigate Carter Page and other individuals with the Trump campaign. We've now learned last week, it's undeniable now that document on behalf of the House Intelligence Committee Democrats that Adam Schiff created, it was full of lies. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely, and not just mistakes, lies, because he was privy to that information. Is that resonating with the voters? Are you making a big deal out of that he has basically put himself and his integrity and the good name of the people in the 28th district out there, and he has now been proven to be a liar?
My strategy when I talk to voters, independent voters or left-leaning voters, which is the majority of voters in our district,
absolutely,
is not to bash Adam Schiff. I don't, or to bash the left for buying into his lies. I really focus on what has he done for our district. And this is how Adam Schiff got rid of Rogan. He went to the voters, aside from, talking about the impeachment thing. He said, look, Rogan's been in office how many years? What has he done for you? And that's what I find resonates with voters the most. Republicans obviously are an easy sell, for the most part.
Sure.
You just tell them you're running against Adam Schiff. They say, where do I sign? How much money do you want? I'm not kidding.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah.
So you then have to counterpoint when you say, what has Adam Schiff done for you? The majority of the time they're going to be lost for an answer, mm-hmm. right? Then Jennifer Barbosa, you're going to say, well, if you give me your support, here's what I will do for you. How does that convert? What will you do for them? What are your priorities?
Well, it's crystal clear that he's ignoring the homelessness in our district. So in a neighborhood like mine where homelessness is rampant, it's just the top issue for everyone. That's how it is. Going from city council area to city, there are many cities in our district. Everyone has their own issues. For example, a lot of people who live around Burbank are concerned about the noise from the airport. Adam Schiff ran on promising that he was going to help with that, and he hasn't so much. Other people, you have to approach each district like a mini city council district, which, mm-hmm. by the way, I'm also learning from Adam Schiff. I've read a lot about how he earned this district, and that's how he won. Is he looked at each portion of the district individually and approached voters based on the issues that matter to them there.
Jennifer Barbosa is our guest. And by the way, what is the website for your campaign?
Barbosa2020.com.
Barbosa2020.com, spelled just like the pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Exactly.
All right. That's my cultural point of reference. And should you become the candidate out of the primary to face off against Adam Schiff, I suspect you would want some debates, some pretty vigorous debates, right?
Yes, I would. I mean, I've already asked for debate. I didn't expect a response. I didn't get a response. I don't know if you followed his last campaign, the debate structure there.
No, actually, I didn't.
Well, what he did was, he does this. He calls them town halls and debates open, but they're really not. They're really scripted. So the League of Women Voters, after the primary, they arranged a town hall debate sort of thing between Adam Schiff and the man who won the primary last time, as well as Brad Sherman, I think it was, and his challenger.
From another district.
Right.
So it was a combined?
Yes. They were all together there on one panel. And I watched it, and I thought that the questions were very sort of slanted in favor of the Democrat side.
Yeah.
Very much so, but it's the most that he would agree to. He's very, we've heard this before, cowardly. He doesn't, he certainly doesn't open himself up for confrontation.
You'd think if he was so great, he'd be he can't wait to debate because he's got such a great record to defend.
No.
Not so much.
No, whenever he comes to town, it's always with a very left-leaning group that promotes it and shields him. His most recent quote-unquote town hall was something.
It sounded like this. Oh. Yeah, That's a pretty strong response from the people at his town hall.
Mm-hmm. And the week before that, he was in the Montrose Christmas Parade, which he does every year. Mm-hmm. Every year, the cheers get softer and the boos get louder. And I went to that, actually. I saw people booing, and sorry, I handed out my business card too.
As well you
and my
should.
campaign card.
All right, Jennifer Barbosa is going to stay with us for one more segment here. And if you have a question, if you live in the 28th, if you'd like to ask Jennifer about some issues that matter to you, give us a call, 800-222-5222, as we focus quite a bit on the local races between now and next November. This is your place for 2020. There is no other place for the presidential election, for the House of Representatives elections, for every local election that matters to you. You will no longer be ignored, Southern California. You have a place right here on the Larry O'Connor Show, 790 KABC. We continue with Jennifer Barbosa, who is a candidate for the 28th District. That is Adam Schiff's district. And you had said you moved to Hollywood in 2013, which had become part of Adam Schiff's district, right?
Yes.
Here we are just 6 years later. Now, you said when you moved there, you suddenly started to realize how different things were there under his leadership.
It was a process. I actually voted for him in 2014. I didn't. He was really off the radar. He was not. He didn't
knock on your door.
No, he didn't. No, he did not. He'd stopped doing that because he was comfortable, especially having gerrymandered the district in such a way that he now had Hollywood with the thick and liberal voters. He has not knocked on
power of incumbency.
Right. So, I was told he's a good guy. He's a nice guy. I still hear that from people. He's a nice guy.
A lot of nice guys, but if he's not doing anything to help the district that he comes from, it's not a comment on how nice he is. It's comment on how effective he is.
Anyone can act nice, but it was clear by 2015 the things he was saying and focusing on we're not really addressing problems we have in our district. For example, my neighbors and I have contacted Schiff's office years ago because we have a big problem with the postal service, and people say, well, you can't blame Schiff if you don't get your mail. Actually, it is a congressman's responsibility to interface with federal agencies like the VA, like the United States Postal Service, like the Social Security Administration.
That's why you send them to Washington, to speak on your behalf to the federal government agencies that you need.
Yes, exactly. And we have
the whole point.
We have a real problem in our district, which I can explain later. It might bore some people with the mail. And I've identified 4 other neighborhood groups across the congressional district, miles away from my home, that are having the same issue and have also contacted Adam Schiff's office for help, and they blow them off. And so, and we're like, it's mail. He's got important things. We're not veterans. Okay. But then you see that he has the time to personally get on the phone with a man who says that he has naked pictures of President Trump.
Right.
And this happened at the same time that we were contacting him about our mail, which, by the way, the issue still has not been fixed.
Well, and this is why Jennifer Barbosa is a real threat to Adam Schiff's incumbency. She is working hard right now. We're 11 months away from election, and she is already on top of the issues with regard to Adam Schiff's failure to serve his constituencies. It's not the last we'll hear of Jennifer Barbosa. She'll be back, and of course our invitation is still open and extended to Adam Schiff. Love to have you on, Congressman. It's Larry O'Connor, KABC.